This is All Access MMA.
Always great catching up with my next guest, Jordan Wright, who's going to be back in action against Jamie Pickett at UFC 262 on May 15th. Jordan, how's it going, man?
I'm great, James. I'm really great. In a good space right now. Training's been going really well. Diet's perfect, and I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well myself. Always great catching up with you, like I mentioned. Right amount of time in between fights. Of course, your last fight was in November.
Yes. And honestly, I want to be as active as I can. It's been quite a bit of time, but with COVID and all this stuff, it's been hard to stay as active as I want. But it seems like since things are clearing up now, I'll be able to be a lot more active and get a lot more fights in.
Now, I got a bit of insight because I actually talked to Jamie Pickett's manager like months ago. It seems like you got a lot of notice for this fight. Like even before the media knew, it seemed like it was something in the works for a while. Is that accurate?
Let me think.
You've got like more than a full camp is kind of what I'm getting at from what I heard.
I think it was around a full camp, to be honest. Like maybe they knew something about it before I did. But, I think it was around, I think I was aware around the 2-month out mark.
Good. Okay.
So, yeah.
That's good. Yeah, better than the debut. I remember where you had to, fight up a weight class and it was
Right.
kind of hectic and stuff. So that's good to get a full camp for this one. What did you learn the most from that last fight against Joaquin Buckley? What did you take away from that performance?
So honestly, I think it was one of the best things that could have happened to me at the time. There were certainly a lot of tactical errors that I made in that fight. And I'm glad that I can sort of fill in those gaps while I'm still relatively young in my UFC career. Because, you tend to see a lot of people who, will be undefeated, going into their UFC, early stages, win, get the title shot, lose, and then they feel like the world is like kind of crumbling down on them. I'm very fortunate enough to have a great team to where we can really reassess and be like, hey, man, like, one thing that Anthony told me after the fight was you can't be a champion if you can't take a loss. And this is just one of those things you're going to have to get through, which it's not uncommon for me. Like I've lost as an amateur. I lost to Anthony Hernandez on the Contender Series, even though that's a no contest now. It's still a loss to me. Mm-hmm. But no, it's true, man. Like it's just another chapter in my life. I don't let things like that, as much as they do weigh you down to an extent in your mind. It's like, okay, it happened because of this. Well, let's try to make it so that won't ever happen again, and let's become a better martial artist now. So we've been focusing ever since the fight on just growing and getting better.
That's awesome, man. Great attitude. And yeah, it's cool to see you make those adjustments. And we're really excited for this fight. Like I mentioned, big card too. UFC 262. Can't beat that, right? Jamie Pickett, another Contender Series vet like yourself. What do you know about him? How do you feel like you match up against him?
I feel like I match up really well against him. He's, long fighter, kind of like myself. We're both kind of, have similar body types. And, I think it's a really good matchup for me. And it should be a really good fight.
Yeah, no, we're looking forward to it. Training camp, anything different for this one? Who are you mainly training with for this fight in terms of training partners and all that?
So I'm still training a lot with my main training partner, Lucas Drews. Who's, a really, really amazing kickboxer, Kevin Crane, Sean Crenshaw, Marcus Gottlieb. A whole lot of guys who've just, been there for me, a lot of guys who are specialists in their own right, and working a lot specifically with Anthony and Vlad and Fabio specifically. Just going over, tightening up every aspect of the game. I'm very fortunate enough to have, a Dutch guy who's my kickboxing coach, a Belarusian guy who's my wrestling coach, and a Brazilian who's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu coach. And they've all fought MMA as well. They're not just like, if I were a fighter, I'd use my jiu-jitsu this way. It's like, yeah, I was a fighter and I had great jiu-jitsu. I'm going to show you how to implement that. So, yeah, been getting a lot of, I've been pretty overtrained for, I think, most of my fights since I was an amateur. So these days it's really the focus is on building up rather than just breaking down. That's one of the biggest aspects of this camp is don't overdo it, man. It's okay. One thing Greg Jackson used to tell me was it's better to be undertrained than overtrained for a fight. And you'll see a lot of these times when people take fights on short notice, some of the best performances of their career because they weren't breaking their bodies down in camp and having their heads go crazy with, nerves and stuff so that they would overwork themselves into dust. So yeah, just being less in my head and training a lot smarter and just building myself up. It's been a great process.
Who's going to be in your corner for this fight?
Same as before. Coach Anthony and Vlad and Fabio. I got the dream team.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. How's this fight playing out on May 15th? Obviously, you feel like you're going to get your hand raised, but how do you envision the fight sort of unfolding?
I see myself finishing him. I'm not exactly sure when. He's a tough guy, but I do see myself finishing him.
John Jones, when was the last time you spoke to him? I know he's going through a tough time with trying to get this Francis Ngannou fight. What do you sort of make of this whole situation?
I think it was after my UFC debut that we had spoken. Of course, he'll put nice, comments on my Instagram and stuff, but we don't really talk as much as we used to. But we did talk to each other after my debut. And sorry, what was the rest of the question?
No, the question was just it's kind of unfortunate. Everyone wants to see him fight Francis. I understand John's perspective where he's like, look, you got to pay me a good amount to take that fight. It's a big fight. I'm moving up a weight class. And he's talking about the viewership. I know he's not doing 1 million buys like, say, a McGregor, but if you look at his viewership, it's similar as to, the boxers, right? Obviously, boxing's a different model, and then I see the UFC side of it as well, where it's like, hey, we got McGregor who's making this, and he's giving us this result. So I was just curious your thoughts on the whole situation, because we all want to see John fight. It's just unfortunate there's all this stuff, politics in the way with it.
Yeah, no, you're right, because it's hard to say, because with John in that situation, it is the UFC is pretty simple in that you do these kind of numbers, you get this kind of pay-per-view bonus and all this stuff. And if he isn't pulling in the same numbers, you have to ask, is it worth to pay him X amount of money? But at the end of the day, he is, one of the longest reigning UFC champions of all time. Is he the longest reigning, time-wise? I'm sure he's
so. Yeah, well, I think part of it
because I know there's blotches with the no contest.
Yeah, so I'm not entirely sure. I'm not. We'd have to ask Mike Bond. He's the stats guy when it comes to that stuff. But yeah, he's up there, obviously, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is weird, but I don't think a lot of people do want to get in there with Ngannou. And Ngannou's a scary guy. As much as John is a very confident person, I'm sure he's even just hey, that's a dude he's really going to have to, establish a really good training camp and get on his A game to take on a guy like that. And he wants to get paid what he feels like he's worth. But yeah, James, I don't really know. I don't have a great answer to that. It's not really
No worries. It's just sort of your overall thoughts. I mean, it's a bummer, right? We want to see him fight Francis. Is kind of what we're getting at.
I'm not exactly sure how to answer that one. But yeah, it would be nice to see that fight.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. Last question before we go. I know it's not your division, but we just had a really impressive fight last weekend. Jiri Prochazka, Dominic Reyes. What did you think of that win from Jiri? He is doing some things at light heavyweight that I think we haven't seen in a while, maybe since Jones. Just very unorthodox with his style and a really great win. I thought that was one of the best fights at light heavyweight we've seen in a very long time, with it only being 2 rounds.
I really like Jiri a lot. I trained with him a few years ago, and he's a really great dude. At the time, I think he was still an early pro, but I didn't know who he was. And then, I remember, a year later, I'm like, wait, this dude's the Ryzen champion? Holy crap, that's pretty amazing. And to see him now is just so awesome. Although, as entertaining and fun as the style is, and I'm a huge fan of Miyamoto Musashi myself. I love his spiritual aspect to the game. The dude's a very inspirational guy. But as far as his fighting style goes, it's entertaining. But when he fought Volkan, he almost got knocked out himself in that first round, and then he ended up knocking him out. In this fight, he was beating the crap out of Reyes, but he got tagged pretty hard there too to make him, shoot in for the takedown. And if you look at a lot of his fights in Ryzen as well, it's a very similar story where he'll almost get knocked out and then end up knocking the other guy out. It's a fun style to watch, but I can see with the trends of MMA, people will watch Wonder Boy fight and come up, and then they all start fighting with their hands down and their base a little low. People start watching Conor fight. They start adapting more of that wide stance with the karate kind of, the backhand and the wide stance kind of stuff. When Dominic Cruz is at the top, people are bouncing around and doing all that stuff. And I could see that people probably are going to try to emulate Jiri a little bit more. They're going to start jumping around and having funky haircuts and becoming Book of 5 ring masters, which is cool and stuff. But in my opinion, it's it's a risky style, because you could be winning, and then you get cracked because your hands are down and you're moving your head almost without purpose a lot of the time. So I think it's great. I think he definitely has what it takes to be a champion. But with Blachowicz at the top, he doesn't waste any movement. Blachowicz is very precise. He doesn't just bounce around for the sake of doing it, and he's a very intelligent fighter. And that doesn't mean that Jiri couldn't win. I could see, Jiri being a champion at some point. But how long can a guy who has a style like that really reign on top? You know, it really relies on a lot of young man athleticism. Whereas you see a lot of fighters as they get older, they don't bounce around as much. They don't have that same type of gas tank. And to take it back to Jan, who's very calm, methodical, moves, and he's like 38 years old. Like, that's the style you want to have. Anderson Silva was the same. He didn't bounce around too much and move too much. There was no wasted movement. So, yeah, again, I'm a fan of Jiri, but I am intrigued to see how well his style will keep going as he's fighting better and better guys, you know?
By the way, I saw you, I don't know if this is new, girlfriend I see now you have. Is that something that's been going on for a while? I was trying to remember. I'm trying to keep up here.
Yeah, no, she and I started dating. It's funny, we went on our first date the first of this year. So I had COVID at the end of December, and we were planning on going out a week before. And it was just like, oh, hey, by the way, babe, I have COVID, so we're going to have to postpone our first date. And she was, oh, no, it's fine. So we started going out on the first, and yeah, we've been going pretty strong ever since then. Yeah, she's a cool girl. It's funny. People ask me like, "Hey, you have a girlfriend now?" I'm like, "Yeah, her name is Griselda," and they're like, "You totally just made that name up. There's no girl in this world named Griselda." Like, no, I'm serious.
Yeah.
Like
she looks like a model, man. Like, good for you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Glad to see it's going well, because I was trying to keep tabs, because I was like, I don't think you had a girlfriend the last time we did our interview. That was in November, right? So.
No, she's good to me. She understands like what I have to do with my career and all that stuff when I need my space or anything like that. And she's just she's awesome. She is the light of my life.
There you go. You're awesome too, man. Like I mentioned, UFC 262. Anyone you want to thank? Any sponsors? Any social media? I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, like always, I want to thank God for giving me this life and all these opportunities. I want to thank my mom for putting up with me and helping me out through my entire life and allowing me to follow my dreams. I want to thank my dad. I want to thank my girlfriend. I want to thank you, my team, and thank you.